Welcome to Getting Ghosted, an intuitive soul collective podcast. I'm your host, Allie Horner. Hey everyone. So we're back and we're going to talk a little bit more about the ways that spirit speaks. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what can kind of like block us from hearing what we need to hear, either when you're reading for yourself, when you are speaking to the other side on your own, or when you're getting a reading. And so I've got my guides here. I've got, Eric and Sam and Joy and the whole crew over here, and they are ready to chit chat. And I heard, let's get ready to rumble. So they're ready to chit chat. I also wanted to just mention, I will have my course on mediumship, working with spirit guides coming up, as well as covering some intuitive reading and learning how to work with your own intuition. I will be having some really, really fun ways to apply to work with the other side and work with your own intuition and spidey senses in everyday life. I'm really excited about this. I've taught this several times before. I used to have a course back in the day. I think it was like 2021, 2022-ish, that I called Everyday Intuition. I feel like it's like so much fun because it's woo-woo and it's mystical and there's some magical side of it and a spirit, fun side of it. And at the same time, it's very practical. You can apply it to everyday life because that's where it really matters. It's a good course as well for anyone that is thinking like, I'm not sure if I want to be a professional psychic or a professional medium. I just want to work on this on my own, but I want a safe group of people to do this work with. And if you think you might want to learn how to do your own readings, this is where you really want to start. You really want to start in a fun cohort of people who are working on the same things, who get get the whole spiritual woo-woo side, who can support you. We have chat groups in my courses as well, so people can get together and practice on their own time. I also do live practice sessions. You're not required to practice reading, but it'll be a lot of fun. And it's a great way to come together and get practiced and just see how all of this works. It's a good place to practice, go through the trial and error, because everyone's just learning in there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That is going to be coming out in the fall. So if you are interested, make sure that you jump into my Patreon groups. The paid Patreon group members are going to get a significant discount on the course of like 20 to 25%. The free Patreon members are going to get a discount of 10% on the course. Okay. So if you're in one of those two, you will get a discount on the course, as well as I always give a discount usually give a discount. So just make sure you're joined up in there. That will be linked up in the show notes as well. And you can also join that through my website. It's intuitivesoulcollective.com. You can also join the wait list that I have set up on my website, intuitivesoulcollective.com. Okay. So just keep that in mind. But this will be a great course for anyone who's interested, been kind of dabbling and is ready to I want to learn how to trust my intuition, follow my intuition in everyday life, see where it's trying to lead me, see where it's trying to take me. Where are my guides trying to take me? Where is spirit trying to take me in everyday life? And we will talk about all sorts of things like grounding and boundary setting, how to maintain energy levels, clearing, channeling, changing and transmuting energy. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to cover a lot of really good stuff in this course. So yeah, I'm really excited. I will also have some really fun, I always do like really fun printables and workbooks and stuff like that you can take with you. There will be, like I said, some live classes and practice sessions, and also some pre-recorded classes. So that'll be a lot of fun. So make sure that you are on the wait list or in the Patreon to find out about that when it opens up in the fall. Now getting to our episode today. So how spirit speaks. This has been a lot of fun to talk about on TikTok. And every once in a while, my guides are like, hey, let's recover this because we've got new people here. And they were like, let's talk about the ways that spirit speaks that people might know. Eric's like, and then he's counting on his fingers that there's this way, there's that way, there's this. And he's like, and then let's talk about some of the ways that spirit might communicate with them that people don't realize. Okay. Because one of the number one things I think I get asked, or I would say it's up there for sure in my readings, is people are like, well, I want to know, how to talk to my guides. I want to know, I want to know how to speak with them. I want to know how to hear them. And I'm kind of like, this is interesting because everyone wants to hear them. Everyone wants to see them. And let's talk about why you might not be, what you would need to do to have that happen, and what might be kind of going on. And just so you know, if you're not hearing or seeing them, that's not a big deal. They're probably communicating with you in another way. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so everyone's stepping in. I've got them in a nice semicircle around me, and they're like, ha, me. I'm testing out their vocal cords, stepping up. And I have a new guide stepping through, and she said, my name is Judy, and she is doing a little curtsy, and she's got her little skirt on and her glasses. She looks very like studious, like scholarly. And she said, and she's got her hair up in like a little messy French twist type of thing with a little cardigan in. And then her shirt has one of those button-down shirts, and it's like got like a frilly, not lace, but like a frilly collar on it. It reminds me of like a doily, but not quite the same. And she said, well, it is cotton. I said, great. I said, okay, Judy, what you bringing for us from the other side? And she said, well, some of us can present ourselves just as easily as you can to each other. And she's showing me, oh my gosh, okay, she's showing me Archangel Michael, because so for me, and for some people, he shows up and he will wear a black overcoat and have dark hair, and he'll like wear slacks and a button-down shirt and all this stuff. He'll have a ring on, etc. And he has piercing blue eyes. He doesn't always show up the same way for everyone. So I'm just going to say that too, because I don't want to get too into angels today. We'll do that another day. But sometimes he shows up clear as day. So, and there was actually a time period where at one point I was like walking down the street and he appeared with me, and I was like, you know, I'm in public and like I can talk telepathically to them or listen to them or just feel their presence, but I don't, you know, like I'm not gonna like talk out loud while I'm by myself. And so one of my friends was like, who was that guy that you were walking with? He was cute. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you were walking with a guy in like he had like a black overcoat on and with the collar up, and he had really dark hair. And I was like, oh my God, she saw Archangel Michael and she has no idea. So I didn't say much to her, but I was like, oh. And Judy is saying, she said, yes, this is true. This is so. There are many people who can actually see spirit clear as day. And this also depends on the spiritual quality of the being coming through from the other side. And I said, okay, so explain that more for people who don't understand, because this is a form of clairvoyance. This is like spiritual sight. And she said, so spiritual sight is essentially when you can see more of the energetic form of a being, whether that's a physical being, so seeing someone who's alive, their auric field, a trail of energy behind them, a color that they have around them, a glow. And she said, yes, or even spots of shadow around them. Those are usually signs of trapped emotion, physical illness, discord in their body, even emotions that are being held in the body. And she said, so that is a form of clairvoyance. And she said, but what many people don't realize is you can sometimes see spirits clear as day, and then other times not see any for long periods of time. Sometimes they show up as orbs, bright lights, sometimes as energetic imprints. And you can see an imprint and confuse it for a spirit, but it's not a spirit. It's just an energetic imprint. Okay. There's a big difference. And she said, yes, indeed. It's almost like seeing someone's shadow and saying, but that's them. And it's like, no, that's just their shadow. That's what an energetic imprint is. This is what we see when people think about a house as being haunted. Okay. It's not the spirit themselves there. They are not there anymore. They might come through and be like, oh, well, that's just where I had a night terror. Don't even worry about that. That can be cleared pretty easily. Sorry. Didn't mean to leave that behind. And she's like, yes, indeed. And she's kind of laughing. And she said, but a lot of people, they see the shadow and they think it's the being, but it's not. And she said, there are no negative spirits. Spirits essentially come up into higher vibrational frequency, into angelic energy. And this is something we've explained a whole bunch on this podcast. So I don't want to get into the weeds. There are definitely previous episodes about this, and I can link them in the show notes for anyone who is new and wants to go back and listen to those as well. There's a lot of good stuff in the early phases of the podcast too about how this stuff works. And she said, now what I want to say as well is that sometimes people can pull through crisp, clear details on a spirit. And she said, for instance, Allie got my outfit. She's also getting a smell. And she said, I worked often in a classroom, and she's showing me the chalkboard so I could smell the chalk. I could smell a little bit of the must. And she said, I also was, she said, I worked in the school library. I was a librarian, the school librarian. And so she had a musty smell. And she said, also we had a lot of pure wool fabrics back then. It was much more common to have pure wool sweaters and cardigans and fabrics. So when we would dress up in things, we would have to clean them really nicely. She's showing having to buff her shoes and stuff. We had to take care of things. We had to expect them to hold for quite some time and to stay with us for quite some time. There was no fast fashion. And I said, so just to be clear, I'm seeing like sock hops and I'm seeing poodle skirts. And she said, oh yes, that was even a little bit more in my teen years, but yes. And I was like, okay, so I'm seeing like this 40s to 50s. And she said, yes. She said more, and I'm seeing more so the 50s for her. And so she said, so for example, some of you will pull through details. And she said, now, some of you who are listening, see if you're getting information about her before she starts to talk about herself, because sometimes that'll happen. You'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I picked all that up. Like, you psychics. And so she's like, you psychics, you like, see, you're doing it. And she said, now there's some other things that I was very interested in and that I loved and adored. And she said, I want everyone to take a moment to pause and think like about what they're picking up that might be connected to her, to Judy. And she said, so these would be my favorite things that I carried in my bag, things that I would go home and be so excited to do, things that I would, try to do at school in between moments of children coming in to the library, etc. See if you can pick up some of that. And we'll give you guys a second, or you can pause this. Okay. And she said, so some of my favorite things. And she said, now you want to scan through your senses, right? So did you see the images? Did you get a smell? Did you hear it? Did you just know it in the back of your mind somehow? Like it just popped into your head as the same way a thought or an idea would? Did you get a visual imprint? Did you see it like a movie in your brain? Did you get a taste in your mouth? Maybe of something specific? Or were you told something by a voice? Did a voice, even a soundless voice, say something to you? Or did you hear something? Okay. And she said, would you like me to know or like to know what the thing was? And I said, yes. And she said, now for everyone, take one more moment to tune in. Pause if you need to, because we're going to say what her favorite things were in a second. Okay, ready, go. Okay. So she said, my favorite book was Gone with the Wind. And she said, I loved Judy Garland. And she's saying, I loved her singing. And I would try to mimic her singing when I was at home alone. And I would even try on a beautiful redder lipstick when I was home alone. And she is showing me as well. She said, try to pick up on a fruit, a food. And she said, I already gave you a hint, but a fruit, wink, or a food that would have been my favorite food that I would have brought every day to school. Okay, you guys got it? Now pay attention to how it came through for you, what form it came through in. Again, which of your senses activated, could be more than one. Could have been just a knowing or a hint in your mind. Okay, and she said, I was a big fan of a juicy red apple. And she said, but I didn't just like a juicy red apple. I loved going to my grandpa's apple farm and picking the apples myself. I liked feeling them. I liked sitting in the trees. I would bring a good book. I would bring a blanket, a picnic basket. I would sit down. I loved it. I would stay out there as late as I could until they would call me in when I was little. And she said, and I loved apple squares and apple slices and apple pies. And I loved candied apples, and I loved fresh baked. She's showing me apples baked with cinnamon and a little bit of brown sugar in the pan. And she said, oh, and a little hint is add a little bit of apple cider vinegar to it. I was like, love it. Tell us more. And she said, so I loved a juicy apple. And she said, now for Allie, she said, Allie here got the red apple in her mind, and then she got the taste and the smell ever so slightly in her nose, but the taste came through first. And I was like, yes. And then I got a bunch of clips and images of her and the apple orchard and her pulling the apple out of her bag, right? And almost could like feel that it would be like crisp and cold. Like that really, like you're like, ooh, I just love it. And this was like a decent sized red apple. And she said, oh yes, red, never green. I was like, got it. And she said, but there's one thing I detested that has to do with apples, and see if you guys can pick up what it is. Take a moment, close your eyes, activate all of your senses. What is it that she didn't like that has to do with apples. Okay, ready? She said, I did not like artificial apple flavoring. So, like things like candies and stuff like that, where they artificially flavored it with apple. She said, I hated it. I detested it. It was almost like, she said it was like she just would like, she's showing a sucker where she's like, ugh, like a little candy where she's like, ooh, like taking it out of her mouth, like absolutely not, or spitting it out in a napkin. And she said, oh yes, spitting out in a napkin is more proper. And she said that's the right way to do it. And she said, I often used to get upset with children because they would put gum under, they would stick gum under the desk or under the table. And she said, I would pull them over and I would say, she's showing like kind of grabbing at their sweater a little bit. She just said I didn't physically like harm them. I would just kind of like pull on their sweater a little bit and be like, come and clean that up. And she said, and sometimes children back then had to do a little detention and they would have to scrape gum off the underside of desks. And I was like, I thought that was just like a myth, like a threat that they used to do back in the day. She would go, like something, I don't know. I just always thought people were exaggerating. She goes, oh no, they really had to do that. And she said, I wasn't a fan of physical punishment. That was still allowed back in the day. Some kids got their hands slapped with rulers or things like that, or a rubber band snap. And she was like, I did not think that was right, but I did make them scrape gum off the bottom of the desks if I saw them putting gum under it. And she's saying one time a boy put gum in a little girl's hair and her hair had to be cut into like almost, and it was a lot of hair. And she said that boy had to scrape gum off the undersides of desks for like, she said like 7 weeks or something like that. That was his like detention. She said, wouldn't you know it, he never brought gum to school again. I was like, okay. Cause I was like, I can only imagine they probably weren't allowed to chew gum. And she goes, oh no gum allowed in school. So, and she was showing gum on the bottom of shoes, like things like that. And she said, but children, they'd try to sneak it. They would try to sneak it in. Now, the other thing that she's saying is she said, so there's many ways, as you can all see, if you were paying attention, there are many different ways that information can come through from the other side. So you might hear information, which is very uncommon for like a lot of, I think you guys need to understand clairaudience is hearing sounds, physically hearing a voice or a sound, right? So I want you to pay attention to, when you get the sense of, for example, she was talking about Judy Garland and Gone with the Wind. Okay, so with Gone with the Wind, Judy Garland singing, did you actually hear singing? Or did you just see Judy Garland and go, oh, I know some songs that she sang? Or did you hear her singing? If you heard her singing, if you heard the imprint of the sound, what you were hearing is her reference, her memory of Judy Garland singing, because it's coming from that spirit, right? So that's a form of clairaudience, hearing music, hearing even movie lines. We talked about this on TikTok recently, so go check that out too if you want some more. Hearing the voice, right? Hearing, you could hear sounds like things that would have been in the room. So for example, when she was referencing the guns, like the kids having to scrape gum off of the bottom of the desks or clean the desks and stuff, I was literally hearing the scraping in my head. Okay. And hearing the legs of the desks moving as they were trying to clean them. So that's clairaudience, right? It can be really little things, like things that would have been in the room at the same time from this person's memories that they're drawing forward for you. Okay. So and it's kind of fun, right? Clairaudience, she said, you can also hear. So some people, when they go into spaces that hold a lot of memory, you might hear clips of conversations that happened in those places years ago. You might hear, for example, there's a famously haunted place, which I don't want to say too much about because I'm going to do a little series on fun things around my area in Denver and stuff like that. I don't really particularly believe in hauntings and negative entities, but I do love local like lore and stuff like that, and energy and talking to ghosts and stuff like that. So anyway, so there is a place here where there's famously a lot of people, even people who don't believe in this stuff, have heard a baby crying in it, and they were the only person staying there. It's a really famous inn here in Denver. And she said that's a form of clairaudience, but that's not you hearing the spirit of the baby, right? Because a spirit baby would have no reason to cry anymore. What you're hearing is the memory, the imprint that would have happened in that hotel or that inn or that, at the time it was a house. when that happened. And she said, so do you guys see the difference? Like, we want you to remember clairaudience can come in many forms. And so you need to be discerning about what you're picking up. You might have also gotten a little bit of taste at some points when we were talking about tuning in, and you might have also gotten a little bit of smell. Okay. You might have just had a knowing. You might have had a feeling. Maybe you could almost feel cold on your hand, like the cold of the apple that I mentioned. Maybe you had a sense or of an energy, a vibration, a feeling in your body that's connected to her, because some people are big clairsentient feelers, right? Maybe you could feel the cold of her, like walking outside really briskly with her bag, right? And her books over her chest. Maybe you got the feeling of the warm sun on her skin as she sat in the apple orchard when that part came up. Maybe you got a feeling of like a breath of fresh air in your chest or in your body, a feeling of lightness when she talked about picking the apples off of the trees. Really, really think about, what did I feel? What did I sense? What did I hear? What did I smell? What did I see? Did I even get a little bit of psychic touch moving in there, right? So like psychic touch is usually when you touch an object and pick up information off of it. However, some people can get a really strong sense of touch where, for example, the apple, they might all of a sudden have a feeling of their hand, like almost like, even though they're not physically holding an apple, like they could have sworn it, they just held it in their hand, right? Like they're like, wow, that's wild. So it can be a little more visceral, right? It can be a little bit more tangible. And also with psychic touch, often that is usually though someone touching a physical item that's here and then picking up information off of it, or it helping to create that connection with the other side. So I just wanted to mention that too. So now with connection to spirit, it's all about what you are comfortable with opening up in terms of your psychic senses. And it's also all about that spirit that's coming through. So for her, because for example, like she loved certain smells and she loved apples and she loved the apple pie and she loved being a librarian. And so she's showing, the eraser and the chalkboard and, getting to set up some of the classrooms and help with things. These are like nostalgic things for her. She said these were some of the best years of my life and she loved what she did. The smell of the old books, getting to hold them in her hands. These were cherished things, stamping the little slips that went into the books. Like I could smell all of this. I could hear it. I could feel it. Right. And so you just want to pay attention to all of your six senses going on with that spirit. And then in addition, you can start to say, okay, is there a message you want to bring through for me or for someone else at this point in time? Is there something you want to guide me to do? Something you want to guide me to see? Some way you're trying to help me, a message that you have that you want to bring through for myself or anyone else. And it's up to you if you want to go that far. But when you're practicing mediumship, that's usually the next step. Okay. And so what I also recommend too is noticing for yourself, like, how do I work best? Everyone has all of the clairs. There is no, you only have one clair or the other. You can have stronger clairs at different points in time. And a lot of people, my dominant clair forever when I was growing up was clairvoyance. Really, really dominant. I was also extraordinarily, I had really strong intuition. So just knowing things. I also had a really strong feeling. I could pick up other people's feelings like crazy. I was like a sponge. I had no idea what was going on, but I did know wow, this person really feels bad, or that person has a physical thing going on, or that person, blah, 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 because I would pick it up. Or this person's saying they're fine, but I'm fine. No, I'm fine. They're not fine. I would know because I could literally feel it in my body. And I knew exactly what was upsetting them. It wasn't just that I would feel how upset they were. It's that I knew exactly why they felt that way and what they were actually thinking. So very, very, very clairvoyant, very clairsentient. And with everything though, I also had a lot of smell. I didn't understand that one of the first signs of psychic smell is having a really strong a really strong sense of normal smell. And I mentioned this in previous episodes, but I could smell when my brother was sick. And no one else would be able to smell anything on him until he got really sick. But that my mom actually would be like, oh, you can smell it on his breath. Every time I would say Mom, my brother's breath it's really weird. It's really bad. My mom would take him straight to the doctor because she knew he's getting strep again. And because Allie always smells it first. And everyone else would be like, I don't smell anything. And I'd be like, Mom, you can't smell that? Like, you can't smell? Like, I'd be like, and I felt like, and this isn't a dig on him, but it's actually like, this is also how dogs work when they smell cancer and stuff like that. And so like that extrasensory smell is really important, right? It can be really helpful at times. It can tell us like, hey, this person's getting sick before they have a lot of other symptoms. And sometimes kids like try to hide symptoms, especially around holidays and stuff. I could also smell like from a block or two away, like if we left the gas stove on, my mom would literally be like, okay, I'm parking back here. And then she would run in and go, oh my God. Yeah. The stove was on and the flame was off and we must have bumped the knob or something like that. And so I could smell when lunch meat had gone bad before anyone else. I would be like, oh, you don't smell that? And everyone else would be like, no, it's fine. And I mean, lunch meat gets a smell. I don't care what anyone else says. It gets a smell when it's gone bad, but I would be able to smell it way out ahead. And I'd be like, absolutely not. Can't even go near it. And that is also, a sign that someone is going to have psychic smell as well. So that's just like, an extra smell sensitivity, but often people who have that have higher psychic smell as well. Okay. I used to have really strong sense of smell, like to the point where I would get sick, like driving in the car. I lived in Chicagoland area. Always, they were always doing road construction. It would make me intensely car sick, whereas other people could kind of tolerate it. But I had such a strong sense of smell, it would really, really, really bother me. Now, these days, I would say like my psychic smell is a little stronger than my normal smell, which is good. But I do want everyone to know that is can be a sign that you're going to have psychic smell, and that might be a more prominent one for you. Now, sometimes spirit smells can be fun and funky, and sometimes they can be more tender and nostalgic, right? So think like she was doing the chalkboard and the old books and the apple and the cinnamon from the pies and the cooking the apples. And then, just last week I was talking about spirit smells and in my video series, and I wasn't even thinking about it at this point in time. I had just showered, came and sat on my little daybed / sofa that I have in my living room and sat down ready to relax. Whiff of BO right up the nose. I was like, what on earth is that? And I'm smelling myself because I'm like, I washed my armpits, right? I was like, did I miss a spot? I can't believe I did that. And I was like, no way. But I was like, no, I smell good. I smell nice. Like I got the loofah. I did a good job. Like, and so I was sitting there and I was like, what the hell? And all of a sudden I saw Sam pop in my head, and he literally had his shirt off and he had his arm up and a hairy armpit. And I saw it coming up close to my face and I was like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you, Spirit Guide Sam. And it was a memory of his that he was trying to show me. When he said, when we were working out on the ranch, he said, it was like just me and the boys, me and the fellas. And he said, hey, fellas. No, not like that. But he was like, what would happen is we would like joke around with each other, just like a bunch of guys, and we would like, take our shirts off. We'd be getting hot. And he said like, we would kind of joke around with each other, and we would joke about some of the people not doing as much work as others. And so we'd be like, no, prove it. Like, you're not even smelly. I can't even smell you. You didn't work hard enough. Stuff like that. And so they would literally like try to torture each other, like putting their armpits in each other's faces. Like I said, they were young men. So boys actually. So it makes a little bit more sense when you think about it that way. And so anyhow, that was like one of the spirit smells coming in, and it felt like it filled my nostrils. Like it's more like the bridge of my nose is the best way I can describe it. Like it's like in my nose and brain at the same time, and it's really strong, sits there for a split second, and then it's totally gone, and there's nowhere it could have come from. That's how you know it's a spirit smell, where you're like, there's no way that could have come from there. But I wanted people to know that it's not always like, people always think of a spirit smell as like a perfume or a baked good or, a cologne, an aftershave, a Christmas candle, cinnamon, like the little like lemon bundt cake that they used to make. And it's like, yeah, that can be it. Roses is a big one. A lot of women from, previous generations, florals, roses, things like that, a lot of them couldn't work or weren't allowed to work. And so what did they do? They baked, they cooked, and they tended garden and, tended to their gardens and things like that. And, they got dressed up, they wore their perfumes, and they got in their Sunday best or whatever. So a lot of their scents and smells can be connected to things like that. However, with Judy, I got the scent of, again, what was unique to her is more the old book smell, the smell of the library, a little bit of a musty smell. Again, like the wool sweater, right? That she would try to keep clean otherwise, because you couldn't just like wash that, right? It would shrink up. She, again, like her shoe polish, I got the scent of the eraser and the chalk. So different types of smells can definitely come in. Sometimes there's funny smells. So Eric does a stinky sock smell for a lot of people. So if you've been wondering where a weird, funky smell is coming from and you listen to my podcast, you might have Eric around. And he also, every once in a while, big whiff of reefer, like in it. Remember, it'll not have a logical place that it could come from. If it's a spirit smell, it'll be right up in the bridge of your nose. It'll be like, and he goes, the good shit. He's like, the good shit, not the sour ass shit that they sell nowadays. And I'm like, I know exactly what you mean. It does. Yeah. I won't get into that conversation, but he's like, it'll be like right up there, right in the bridge of your nose, where you're like, okay, I know I'm in a place where no one could be smoking that. I don't have that, on me, whatever it is. There's nowhere that could have come from. And remember, if it's a smell from something else that's in your physical environment and it's not from spirit, it's going to linger in the air. Okay. So for example, the place I used to live in, the landlord, love him, great guy. But he used to work out of the basement of that apartment, or house sometimes. He had like his little office in the basement. So, and he smoked cigarettes. And so sometimes there was one closet where I would open the door and I would get a whiff of cigarettes in there, and I'd be like, oh, he must be over here doing something, because it would come up through the vent that happened to be in the closet. So not a spirit smell, right? But if I hadn't known that he smoked cigarettes, I probably would have been like, where could this even be coming from? Right? So your mind can kind of like take things and run with them, and you got to be a little bit mindful. And sometimes it takes a little bit of investigation too. Now, the next part is with clairaudient hearing. So now remember, a lot of clairaudience is actually pretty rare. A lot of people don't want to hear voices talking to them. It's not always very comfortable. A lot of people get worried about being able to control it. So it's not one of the predominant clairs. A lot of people do hear music, movie lines, singing, humming, favorite songs, sounds from the person's lifetime. It could be you hear, let's say someone's dad came in once, and you know how there's a lot of fellas love taking care of their lawns. Immediately riding lawnmower, weed whacker, hedge clippers, the sounds came in just as much as the images came in, and I got the smell of the fresh cut grass, and I got this, I could hear the rain, and I could see him standing on the porch with his hands on his hips and his cup of coffee. I could smell the coffee. I could feel at the same time a deep sense of satisfaction in this stuff. It was like I could feel how he felt. I could feel that he was so satisfied taking care of everything. And she goes, we could not pry that man off the front lawn. He just loved his lawn. He loved the weed whacker. And she was like, he used to stand right on our front porch, and it was hand on one hip, cup of coffee in the other one. And he would just stand there. His coffee would be going cold, and he'd be standing there sipping that coffee. It was like he was just glued into that position. He loved when it would rain. He would stand out there and watch it. I was like, yeah, that man loved that lawn. And it gave him this sense of he was taking care of something. And so that's another example of the senses coming and mixing together. And with that clairaudience, it wasn't about hearing him talk. And he did give me messages. It was more telepathic without sound. But the clairaudient piece was all of these favorite sounds from his life. So that's another example of that. In terms of, I want you guys to pay attention to taste too, because taste and smell often go together, just like when you're eating food. So you're likely and often going to get them together. Another interesting one with spirit taste is that it can be good taste and bad taste. So keep that in mind too. It also can be where you get a craving for something all of a sudden. So that's spirit taste a lot for me, is all of a sudden I'll crave pepperoni pizza. I don't really love pepperoni pizza. I mean, it's good, but it's like not something I crave on my own. When that comes in, I know Eric's hanging out because I'm like, Eric. And then there is one reading that I did for a friend a long time ago. We were just kind of like reading for each other just for fun to practice. And she said, can my grandpa come in? I was channeling a whole bunch of messages from him. And she was like, this all makes sense. It's, like confirmed everything. And then we were kind of going about our days. And I was like, I got to get going. I got to get up to the mountains. And as I was driving in the car, I had this absolute strong urge to stop at a diner on the way up. Like I had to go. I had to have a piece of plain toast with butter and just white bread, basic white bread, like Wonder Bread, with butter and a cup of black coffee. I don't drink my coffee black. I don't go out of my way to eat plain toast with butter. Like, it's not something, these are not things I normally think about. I love coffee, but not black coffee. And so, but I had to stop at this place on the way. Like I had to stop at this diner, a couple blocks from my house. So, I went in there, ordered the toast and the coffee, and the waiter was kind of looking at me a little funny. Like I could tell that he was thinking like, this is such a grandpa thing to order. And all of a sudden I took one bite out of the toast, had a sip of the coffee, and I was like, ooh, okay, that went away really fast. I was like, this isn't, that was good for a split second, but now it's gone. And all of a sudden I went, oh my God. Oh, I know what just happened. And texted my friend and said, hey, did your grandpa, just by any chance, did he love like sitting at a diner and the toast and the coffee and all that? And she was like, oh my God, that was his Sunday ritual. Every Sunday, diner near the house, white bread, butter. And he would sit there, spread the butter on. It was like his favorite thing, cup of black coffee. I was like, yeah. You'll never guess what just happened. And she was like, oh yeah, that's definitely him. And so that was another thing too, is that like, since I was doing the reading for her, that was another confirmation for her that it was definitely him there. Cause those are not things that I would normally eat or crave, right? Or go out of my way for. So that can be something as well with the spirit taste, is like craving a food that's kind of abnormal for you out of nowhere, to the point where you're like, I have to go get this. I have to go get this. I have to go get this. I cannot stand it anymore. And Eric sometimes jokingly says, we vicariously live through you. So sometimes I'll crave something, I'll start making it, or I'll go out and order the piece of, pepperoni pizza or whatever. And Eric will stand there and he'll go, like jokingly, like he does the thing where you wave the smell of the scent of something up to your nostrils. And I've gotten the same thing that came through about someone's dad with the Sunday pasta sauce. And so that I'm going to write about in one of my next Substack articles, where I'm sharing stories about my different readings and things that come through from the other side. So subscribe to my Substack for more of those in depth. So those are everything. And then of course we have claircognizance, which is a clear knowing. Now this one, for most people, this is a really common one. This is a big way that spirit communicates that people just miss a lot when they're not really, used to communicating with the other side. So ideas that pop in your head out of nowhere, things that just come in and there's no logical reason for them to be coming in, almost like as if it's an answer to a question or a continuation on one of your own thoughts, right? Hits of inspiration that come up, right? Where you're suddenly like, I really feel like I want to go do this. So that's part of like me going to the diner, a hit of inspiration, a strong a knowing I needed to go there for no other logical reason. But it also happened to happen right when I had just been reading for a friend, right? Sometimes it will be like I just know something about someone, or I just know something without any logical reason for knowing it, right? About a subject, about a person, about a place, about a thing, etc. So think about the kids who are really connected to the other side, and they know exactly where someone's buried, what year, how old they were when they died, how they died, etc. That can be claircognizance. So it doesn't come through as though a voice is telling you, or as though you're having a telepathic conversation or seeing anything about it in your head. It comes through as though you're just like, well, I don't know, all these things are just popping in my head. I don't know how I know them. I just know them. Okay, so that's claircognizance as well. Okay, and spirit can send those things to you. They often show it to me as though they're sending paper airplanes. Like, here you go. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. Or as though it's like a game of telephone, right? And it's like you're plugging in the telephone line, line, except there's no like talking back and forth. And they said, think about it like, it would be a little bit more akin to someone, using a telegram because there's no sound, right? I was asking them, I was like, what else do you guys want me to cover? And they're like, clairsentience, of course. And I'm like, all right, we missed that one. So sensing and feeling, I think I talked about it for a minute earlier, but getting a sense. So like with the one gal's dad mowing the lawn, the feeling of satisfaction, right? Deep satisfaction. Another example is how they feel about their family or about certain things now. You might get a feeling in your body when they come in. You might feel unconditional love in your heart, pride, and a feeling of love and beauty and appreciation so deep that it's like you feel like you're going to burst into tears. That happens a lot with spirit. A lot of people cry when they start to connect with someone on the other side, especially when you're newer to it. It's really common to cry, and it doesn't feel like bad crying. It feels like joyous reverence, appreciation, unconditional love. We're not always used to feeling all those things all the time. Our baseline as humans tends to be a little low. So for what we feel in terms of everyday appreciation and satisfaction. So when you call in loved ones from the other side, your own or other people's, you likely will pick up on those spiritual feelings. That is often how you know you're connecting to spirit, is a feeling of overwhelming peace, like you're being held, cocooned, protected, that again, unconditional love. Often they feel almost like a joyousness. They have literally told me before, we exist in ecstasy and bliss beyond what humans can imagine, besides outside of humans using certain substances, which again can't even come close to what spirit is experiencing. And they said that is why for so many of you, it can be very overwhelming emotionally when you first connect with us on the other side, because it pushes a lot of your denser emotions to the surface, and then you feel our bright, light emotions or energy. It's more like their energy. To us, it feels like an emotion. To them, it's just their energy signatures now that they're in spirit and free of the denser, heavier things. So for us, it's like... right? They said it's very difficult to describe. It's 10 times more intense than anything we normally experience, right? Now, one of the other things they said is, now keep in mind with clairsentience, again, you can feel energy imprints. That is not the spirit themselves. So for example, if someone, lived in a certain environment or inhabited a certain environment and let's say they felt angry a lot in that environment, right? Maybe they went through a lot. They were a teenager. They were really up and down, and they were really sad sometimes, really happy at others, disappointed. They would slam things on their desk. There was a lot of anger, right? And then let's say then they move away and they go to college and their life gets a lot better and yada yada. But then someone moves into their house, 50 years later, moves into their childhood home. Well. And let's say that person, who used to live there, they pass away, live a full life and pass away. And then there's someone who moves into their childhood home and they're staying in the kids, where the teen was when they were a teenager, their old bedroom. Well, maybe that person starts to pick up on this up and down feeling. I feel sad. I feel happy. All of a sudden I'm feeling more angry. I don't understand. This isn't like me. They don't feel that way all the time. They just feel that way when they're in the room sometimes. And then they start to think, what if there's an angry spirit here? What if that's that person who used to live there who's passed? They feel great in spirit, but the energy and the emotions that they felt when they were alive might still have a little bit of an imprint on that room. And the person who's staying there may just be more sensitive clairsentiently. They also may be a touch-based sensitive. So meaning like when they're in the physical space, when they're touching the physical walls, they're on the physical floor that the other person, walked around on and stood on and laid on or sat on, they might feel a little bit more, right? They're a little more connected to a physical space. Also, if you're in human design, if you're a reflector, you're going to be a little bit more likely to pick up on things in physical spaces as well. So keep in mind too, there are ways to deal with that. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But this is not the spirit themselves that you're feeling, unless it's light, peaceful, held, unconditional love, appreciation. That's more spirit's energy. The up and down, the anger, dread, whatever, fear, energetic imprint, or picking up on other people who are alive. So people who are clairsentient can also pick up on other people that are living still. Okay. And again, they might confuse that. They can pick up on people's memories too. And that doesn't mean that that spirit is still in those memories, that they still have those emotional ups and downs and whatever. That spirit might just be showing you, hey, here's a memory of something in my life that would connect you or the sitter to me and give them validation of, yes, I know that they went through that. Yes, I remember that too. Okay. And so, but you might feel it. You might feel it in your body for a split second. Another clairsentient thing that can be a little uncomfy, and I ask my team and the other side not to bring this through when I'm in readings, is picking up on how someone passed. That's a lot for a medium to experience. And when I did not know any better when I was younger, I didn't know that I was connecting to the other side. I thought I just had a big imagination. I was picking up on people who died, and I was picking up on how they died. And it wasn't scary. It was more just emotional. I would see images sometimes. Often I would feel the grief of the people around them who were mourning them. And I did not understand that. When I first started connecting to the other side consciously, I was connecting to someone who was well known, who had passed, several people who were well known actually. And like one of them was Robin Williams. There were a couple of others. And I actually, because these were big beloved public figures, right? Think about that. There's tons of people who are grieving them. I picked up on the collective grief around that happened because of their passing. And I wasn't picking up on the spirit themselves, right? When their actual spirit would come through, like when Robin's spirit would come through, I would feel tenderness and love and joyfulness and playfulness and excitement, right? I would feel that entertaining quality to him. Often he would be very tender actually with me, and very sincere at times, and hold a lot of that space. But I would often feel like I wanted to giggle when he came in. He would bring in that light, bright, free, peaceful energy. But I also would burst out into tears because I would feel other people's grief about his passing. And I did not know that you could do that. Okay, so that definitely can happen. That does not mean you're picking up on that spirit's energy. You're picking up on what? Other people's feelings about their passing. Okay. So when you're doing readings, this is something to be aware of as well. Just because sometimes when you're doing readings, something that's really important is you have to differentiate the sitter or the person you're reading for, their grief, from the spirit. Right? And from the person that they want read. It's important that you also have emotional boundaries with the people that you're reading for, and you can ask spirit to help with that. And I also we'll teach how to differentiate, how to protect yourselves, how to ground, how to not pick up on the person, because you want to be reading from spirit, not reading the person when you're in a mediumship reading. Okay. We'll talk about all that. Anyone can learn it. This is not, these gifts are only for people who, it runs in families. Bull fucking shit. Sorry, but it is. Anyone can do this. Everyone can do this. It's just a choice of if that's something you want to really learn and acclimate to. Okay. So clairsentience has so many different ways it comes through: emotional quality, sensing, vibration. But what I've noticed with emotion when it comes from spirit or when you're clairsentient is it hits you in your body first, and then your brain is trying to make sense of it. Right? Your brain, it's really important that you don't tell a story around what you're feeling before you have talked to spirit or gotten some other validation or confirmation. So make sure you're not telling a story about what you're seeing, sensing, feeling, hearing, etc. We'll talk about that more in the course too for anyone that's interested in taking it. Because that's where people can get really off track with when they're practicing mediumship and readings, is like they start to interpret things, and often they interpret them the wrong way. Okay. So think about it like a puzzle. You have all the pieces. It's important you don't try to jam them into places that they don't go, right? Where they don't fit. So with clairsentience as well, we can also get body sensations, which is really important to understand about spirit as well. So you might get chills down the spine, like when I went to the Molly Brown house recently, which I'll talk about soon too, and all the fun spirit scavenger hunts they're taking me on. You can feel chills down the spine, chills down the arm, I know someone who gets a feeling of electricity on the top of his thighs. You can get a pit in your stomach or a feeling in your stomach. You can get a feeling in your chest, like the heart expanding and opening feeling. That's definitely very much spirit, often right there in the chest. Sometimes you might have a little bit of a feeling in your throat. If you're picking up on something to do with how they passed, you might get a physical sensation in your body. Again, I ask my guides and team not to do that. So for example, someone who came through with a heart attack, I saw him open his shirt, and I saw an image of the scar where they had tried to, they'd done surgery on him and he had recovered, and then he had another heart attack soon afterward. So he was showing me that, and they said, and his loved one confirmed, like, yes, he had a prior heart attack. He had open heart surgery. He had a huge scar. And yes, then he did end up dying from another heart attack not long after that. And so I had a feeling of pressure in my chest, like squeeze really hard. And I went, ooh, I don't love that. Now, however, there can be a good heart thing that happens. It's called a heart squeeze in a different way. This often can be from spirit, but usually more so from like angelics. And it feels like someone is like giving you laughter injected right into your heart. I don't know how to describe it another way. Laughter and love. It's like a heart hug, heart squeeze. It feels so fun and bubbly that usually people burst out laughing and crying at the same time when it happens. And it's like a feeling of almost like sweet relief at the same time. Like the song that comes to mind to describe it is the song Sweet Disposition, where it's like sweet disposition, ba-da-da-da-da, da-da. Da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da. That song. It feels like that. And as I started singing, I got spirit chills all down my arms. Okay. And sometimes you'll literally get chills or a tickling feeling where you're like, woo, like that. Someone that does that a lot actually is Brittany Bento. If you guys haven't seen her, she does it all the time in her videos. And people are like, what is that? And I'm like, she's getting spirit chills. It's really hard to describe. It feels literally like your whole body's going, like that. And it actually feels really good. And it can feel like excitement bubbling up, almost like how little kids are when they're excited. That's what it reminds me of. You can also get a feeling of like, so for example, when I'm really not supposed to do something, I will literally feel like they're putting their hands on my shoulders. And it'll feel like I have heaviness going over me, like someone's sitting on me. And it's literally like they're trying to tell you something. If I need to meditate or tune in, I will feel that feeling of almost like again, it does not feel bad. It's more like, heaviness, not in an emotional heaviness way, heavy as in, whew, I just feel like I need to lay down. Whew, I feel like I can't get up right now. That does not bother me because it doesn't feel bad. It feels more like, hey, pause, tune in. Hey, pause, don't get in the car right now. We're trying to keep you from getting in a fender bender. Hey, pause, we want you not to react to that text yet. Hey, pause. So it's a good thing every single time. Okay. Hey, pause. Like you're going to get lightheaded if you stand up too soon after meditating. Hey, pause. It's a pause feeling. Once they actually did this, and I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast episode, and it was because I needed to not go on a road trip. Like we were going to leave that day. And then it turned out there were earthquakes all over where we were going to be driving through. Not good. Not good. And so they were like, hey, pause, like leave in a day or two. Right. And so I've had this feeling before too, when plans weren't going to work out. And it literally feels like you're going to walk through a brick wall. That can be spirit as well. They're giving you a no signal. Sometimes a no signal can be like your body pushes backwards. So lots of people play with yes, no responses too. Where one of my friends was like, when it's a yes response, I will literally get like, it feels like a spirit's poking me in the back and pushing my body forward for a yes. Right. It kind of depends on the person too. You want to be really mindful with somatic stuff like that too, just because a lot of us have a lot of different, somatic responses to stuff. So be mindful when you're doing somatic stuff. But chills and, some people get a feeling of a little like cold on their cheek, and that like my great aunt kisses me on the cheek sometimes, or gives me a little peck on the cheek, because when we would give hugs, she would often press like the sides of her lips and her cheek to my cheek when I was little. So that's like one of the symbols from her is like a little bit of cold, and her hands were always cold. And she, like I would always have that little cold sensation. So that's always a sign that it's her. are. Sometimes you might feel electricity or a chill in your hand if they hold your hand. You might feel like they're giving you an energetic hug sometimes. So just keep in mind, like that can be spirit stuff too. Another thing can be a pull from the center of your body, like you have a lasso going around you or through your middle that's pulling you to your car, pulling you to do something, pulling you to a certain place. I have literally been out on a walk and had energetically felt like someone grabbed my shoulders and spun me around and went back over. I was like, okay. There was a little free library that I had walked by and it was like, nope, come back, and looked in there and there was a book in there that ended up being one of my absolute favorite books of all time. And I don't believe it's in print anymore. So it was like, hey, grab this, because this is an important read for you right now. It's going to help you put some pieces together and it's going to be like, it's going to go out of print. I believe it's out of print. I haven't been able to find it in print anywhere anymore. So, so that was like, hey, like, whoa, stop. And that day I had felt compelled to go for a walk, like while it was snowing out, which I love to do anyways, but, it was really cold that day. And I remember thinking like, God, it's really a cold day. I don't know why I'm going on a walk, but I felt like I had to. And that's what ended up happening. So, sometimes those pulls and those nudges, those tugs can be like, hey, wait, come back. Hey, wait, we need you to go do this really quickly. Like, trust us type of thing. I also once, very recently, was doing a reading for someone and their baby that they unfortunately had lost, had come through, and he wanted me to go for a walk for his reading rather than have me sit down inside and tune in with him. He really, really, really wanted to go for a walk. And when I was walking, I literally felt him tug on my hand and it felt like it almost yanked me over to this pond area. And it was because a blue jay landed right in front of me. And I mean, we don't have blue jays by that pond ever. I've lived here for almost like over 15 years now. And so, this blue jay had landed right there and his mom went, oh my God, that's one of our signs from him. And she was like, his dad and I, we get blue jays. And I was like, oh my God, he wanted you to see that right now. And even just recounting that, even just retelling that story, I got chills down my side and my back. And so that's how it'll feel. Okay. Now people get different feelings and sensations though for different things. So you want to pay attention to your own. Something else that can happen as well that people don't realize is a buzzing feeling inside of their body when spirit is around. Because it's a lot of high energy. People don't always realize you can get heart flutters. You can get, now I don't always talk about heart stuff because if you have heart things or if you're concerned, you should get checked out. We don't want to ignore medical things or potential medical things here, but heart flutters can be a thing from spirit, as can a little bit of like a buzzing feeling in your body. That can be spirit energy as well. Even a feeling growing in your solar plexus can be spirit energy too. And them kind of like coming through because their energy is higher and brighter and higher vibration than ours. Whereas we're kind of like in that density more so. Okay. Sometimes people get a little spacey. That can be spiritual energy as well, especially if you're ungrounded or just not used to it. And we'll talk about how to deal with that and how to work on your practices in our group. But yeah, so there can be a lot of like really cool different practices. Again, things like cold spots, hot spots, usually cold spots, electric spots, walking through a cold spot out of nowhere. Totally can be spirit if there's no other logical explanation. That's not weird at all. Okay. I'm going to do a part 2 on other ways that they communicate that don't come through our 5 senses and don't come through our deep listening tool of the physical body in energy form. But if you have questions so far, if you want to send in your stories, I'm going to be doing a listener episode this upcoming month on your spirit stories and chills and all the ways that they've connected with you, questions that you have about how they're connecting. So please send them in. You can send them in at intuitivesoulcollective.com. I will do a part 2 on other ways that they're communicating with you in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Everything like the waitlist for the course is going to be linked up in the show notes, the Patreon group, my Substack, some of the fun merch and things that I'm working on. Those will all be linked in the show notes. The merch is coming out soon, but there's waitlists and all that fun stuff. So yeah, feel free to check everything out in the show notes, get readings, etc., etc. And we'll be back next week. Thank you, everyone.